that things there and here are food for care. Because here, Friday night, we get just a bit more than a minute. And the troubles, you know, we were people they're scared because people come Friday night, eat dinner.
She make a big lunch for Shabbos lunch maybe.
She never bought one when she could buy three.
Okay.
Ladies, please.
I went almost 1 year without having to buy anything.
Good evening, Erev Tov, and welcome. Those I missed last week, welcome back. We have this week, we're starting a new Chumash. So anybody who was not listening by last week can still start fresh. As my teacher used to say, every Sunday at our school, every Sunday, one of my teachers used to start. It's a new week. Anybody did not listen last week can start listening this week. So we are starting the third book of the 5 books of Moshe. The Chumash means Chamesh. The book is Vayikra. In English they call it Leviticus. Known as the book of Korbanot, the book of offerings and sacrifices. This parsha introduces a number of different korbanot, different offerings. You have a parsha which has 111 verses. And when you read this parsha and you go over the 111 verses, and you see to yourself that I guess it's not so simple. It's not so simple. I am trying to return to God. I want to go back. I want to come back home. But in order to do it right, I have to go buy an animal, a behemoth, and bring it up to Yerushalayim, and offer it at the base of Mikdash, offer it at the temple, on the altar, and only then is God going to like me the way I was liked by Him before I sinned. So if that's the case, what happens today? We don't have Yerushalayim, and we don't have the base of Mikdash, and we don't have sacrifices. So what's going on? Are all our sins not atoned? And if that's true, so we're all walking around loaded with baggage just because we cannot do what this week's parsha says to do, to bring a korban, to bring an offering. And if that's true, this is going to look very bad on the day of judgment. Imagine, we didn't have the opportunity to atone. We didn't have the chance to bring a proper kapara, a proper korban, an offering. And therefore, we end up living our whole life till 120 gesunde Jahren, healthy years, but if you didn't bring a korban, something is lacking. Because if it's not, then you wouldn't have this parsha. So you study the parsha and you go verse by verse by verse, and it introduces this type of situation and this type of korban, and you walk away from the parsha with a very bad feeling. What's going to be? Who am I if I cannot do anything which is being described in this week's parsha? Imagine a Yid woke up this morning. It's already after sunset. He did not put on tefillin today. According to this week's parsha, he has to bring a sacrifice called korban olah. Olah means an all burned offering in order to be accepted in God's eyes as he was before he did not put on tefillin, before he wronged Hashem. Somebody, by mistake, desecrated Shabbos. Happens. I come into my room, by mistake I turn on the light, Shabbos. According to this week's parsha, I have to bring a sin offering and offer it before Hashem for mistakes. and in order to bring back and to reestablish my relationship with God. I wronged him. I did something which is not in favor in his eyes. But there's no Mizbeach. There's no Yerushalayim. So what happens to all that? Matter of fact, there's an interesting Talmudic story about a great rabbi. His name was Yishmael, the son of Elisha. The Talmud says, in Tractate Shabbat actually, Masechet Shabbos, the Gemara discusses about, a person should not study Torah and Shabbos next to the light of a candle. Why not? Because when you get immersed in your study, and it's very, very exciting to study and to learn, and you're going to be in the middle of a juicy discussion, you had a good question, and you're just about to get the answer, but the candle is about to be extinguished. So what do? You run to the shelf, take a little bit of oil, add to the plate, in order the candle should continue lighting. You just violated the prohibition of lighting fire on Shabbos. You're not supposed to add oil even to an existing fire. So the Gemara in Shabbos talks about it, this type of situations what a person should do or not do in order to protect himself from violating Shabbos. Says the Gemara, Vayikra lo eraner, a person should not read, you want to look it up at Shabbos 12b, a person should not study next to the light of a candle. Says the Gemara, there was a rabbi with the name of Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha. Omar, and he said, I'm going to be fine. I can read, and I'm going to protect myself. I'm strong. I'm conscious about Shabbos. I know the laws. It's not going to happen to me. Omar Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha said, Ani ekra velo yate. I will read by a lamplight, and I will not tilt the lamp. They used to tilt the oil towards the wick in order to increase his light. I am good enough. And once he actually read and studied by the lamplight, and he was just about to tilt the lamp, but caught himself on time. So he said, okay, how great are the words of the rabbis, of the sages, that they said one may not read by the lamplight. I almost desecrated Shabbos. Says the Gemara, that happened once. But then he again convinced himself, like many of us do, it's not going to happen to me. To me, it's not going to happen. I am a strong person. I have a clear mind. I know what's going on. Li ze lo yikre. To me, it's not going to happen. Nachon? Says the Gemara, once Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha read by the lamplight, and actually, in fact, tilt the lamp. He ended up violating the prohibition of increasing light on Shabbos. And what did he do? He had a notebook. Says the Gemara, "V'kosav al pinkasei." He wrote in his notebook the following. He saw his notebook. You know what the notebook said? The Gemara brings the quote. Katav al pinkaso. Pinkas is the notebook. Ani, Ishmael ben Elisha. Ishmael, the son of Elisha. Sorry, Elisha. Kariti ve'iteiti ner b'Shabbat. I read by a lamplight and tilted the lamp on the Shabbos. And he continues writing. Lekeshe yibane bet hamikdash. once the temple will be rebuilt, avi chatat shmeina, I will bring a fat chatat offering. He learned Parshas Vayikra, like we all learning this week, and he kept a notebook. And the notebook actually said, what happens? And he made himself an account, okay? Came the end of Shabbos, he took out a pencil and paper, and he wrote down, Yishmael ben Elisha, I owe the temple a chata shmeina. Not just a chsin offering. He said, shmeina. Shmeina means I'm going to bring a fat one. Because he wasn't just violating Shabbos by mistake, he was actually, consciously doing something which knowingly could lead to desecrating Shabbos. Wasn't like he went by mistake and turned on the light. No, then you bring a sin offering. Doesn't have to be a fat one. No. But once he was knowing what the sages said, and he knew that this is forbidden, and nevertheless he felt that he's maybe above it, not because of arrogance, could be because of consciousness and awareness. He knows, Shabbos, I don't do this on Shabbos. I don't do this on Shabbos. Nevertheless, it happened. And once it happened, he made sure to write. This is what the Gemara called this. Recorded in the Gemara. He went and he wrote clear that this is what I'm going to do. Would you say, oh, maybe only happens once, one rabbi, you have one story, Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha? No, maybe this is not the common. But there's another Gemara. And this Gemara is in Yuma. And from this Gemara it seems that there was common practice. Common practice. Know what the Gemara says in Yuma? Says the Gemara. No? The Gemara says that was actually the practice of many people who kept notebooks and they kept on and they kept on recording. I mean, I would be running out of paper.
You mean the same person kept on recording?
No. The opposite. Right. I'm saying that it wasn't only that person.
No, I understood that. But when you said they kept on doing it, they did it more than once?
Yeah. Not the very same prohibition, there are other prohibitions.
Right. I mean, studying by the Shabbos candle.
Just a second. Let me just find the Gemara here. I was on the right page. Why can I find it? Just a second. Just give me a second. Oh, my Rabbi Lazar. Listen to this Gemara. Here the Gemara actually brings us a practice. In Yuma A80A. Says the Gemara, Omar Rabbi Lazar says, Ha'ochel chaylev bizman hazeh, one who eats chaylev. Chaylev is the non-kosher fat of an animal. If he eats today's days, he ended up eating chaylev by mistake. Tzarich sheyichtov lo shiur. He must write down for himself the measure of what he ate, because then it might come another court and increase the measure. Basically, there's a discussion in Gemara, what is the measurement of what's it called, of chaylev to violate the prohibition, and there's a discussion, one court holds like this, another court might hold differently. So basically, he has to keep it in mind and keep note and to see what's going on in order to make sure that that what's it called? That he violated. And not only that, but he actually writes, Achalti Shuman Chelev. Not only does he write that I ate, he has to write how much of it he ate. Because
What is it he ate?
Chelev is this fat. There's a certain fat
Ah.
part of an animal that we're not allowed to eat. It's in the back of the animal usually. Today, most of the time, we don't even deal with that. But we give it away to the non-Jew who is able to enjoy it. But in many times, a good shochet knows how to clear out which part of what. It's called menaker. There's a certain specific job in shchita of nikur. Nikur is removing and identifying exactly which parts of the fat is not good and not unedible. And there is measurements. How much do you have to eat in order to violate the prohibition? And there is a discussion, different opinions, different courts. So Rabbi Eliezer says that actually you're not only writing that I ate chelev and I owe a sin offering. You even write down how much of chelev. Today I ate 20 grams of chelev. Could be that by this court 20 grams of chelev is not considered a violation, but by another court it will be considered a violation and we don't know. Therefore you have to keep proper records, the Gemara says. Matter of fact, the holy Shilah, and we spoke about it many times, Rabbi Yeshaya Levi Hurwitz, who lived over 300 years ago, and in his book, Shnei Luchot HaBrit, he brings it as a practice, a common practice that people used to actually keep a notebook, and every time they violated a Torah prohibition, they made sure to record it, because the time will come, they should be able to know how many korbanot they have to bring, based on this big practice. Matter of fact, there was a famous rabbi in Turkey. About 160 years ago, he was the chief rabbi of Turkey. His name was Reb Chaim Palagi. Chaim Palagi was a very famous rabbi. He wrote many, many, many books. You can see all his books. He wrote tens and tens of books, or maybe even 100 books in halacha, mostly in Jewish law. Chaim Palagi. All of his books you can find in the library of the Sephardic Bikur Cholim. They have all or most of the books that was written by Chaim Palagi. Sephardic Bikur Cholim in Seattle is mostly a Turkish synagogue, and as Turkish Jews, they must have been very proud of their chief rabbi 150 plus years ago, this rabbi known Reb Chaim Palagi. Very famous rabbi. I read some of his books in response. He was a very, very big, a giant in Torah. So he discusses actually the practicality of this tradition, so to speak, by the rabbis that we just mentioned in the Talmud. He says it's not important to keep a booklet. It's not important to record it. Why not? Says Reb Chaim Palagi. He brings that in the words of the prophet, we're actually reading it every year on the last day of Passover. It discusses who Mashiach is going to be. What is the identification marks of Mashiach? So the prophet Isaiah says one of the signs about Mashiach is Vehiricho B'irat Hashem. Mashiach is going to be able to identify things by the sense of his smell. Imagine two people come to Mashiach for a quarrel, for an argument between them, and Reuven tells Shimon owes me $100, and Shimon says, I never borrowed $100. So what do we do today? We ask Reuven to prove it. Is there a document? Are the witnesses? Did you have $100? We're trying to figure out who is right and who is wrong. You have to prove it. What is Mashiach going to do? Reuven says, he owes me. Shimon says, he doesn't owe me. Reuven, come here. Okay, I see that you... Come here, Shimon. Okay, Shimon, you owe him. You don't owe him. That's what the prophet said. Vayikra, he's going to be able to smell. He's going to have to. He's going to have such a sensitive smell that he's going to be able to realize. That's what it says. V'yotza choyta migeza ishai v'yirichoi b'yiras Hashem. That's prophecy. That's the prophecy about Mashiach. Says the Reb Chaim Falaji, don't keep booklets. It's okay. Don't worry. Mashiach is going to come over to you. 700 sacrifices for sin offerings, another 1,500 for not putting out tefillin, and you get to work and figure out how to
There's an expression, smell of fear, you know,
smell
of fear.
of fear.
There's an old,
Oh yeah?
yeah.
Okay, I guess it's related. So basically that's what it is. So he said, what's going to help you? A booklet. You need a booklet. You're going to be told by someone walking by you, just smelling you, a little sense, and you're going to end up getting into the...
Many years ago, I read a book that there was a guy in Germany, a doctor, I think, whose name was Dr. Schmeckgut, and he changed his name to Dr. Schmeckbesser.
Schmeck is not so bad. I thought if it's a comment, it will be a little more. So the question is, so how do we atone today? How does it work today? Matter of fact, there's a famous Hasidic story about the two rabbis. We spoke about it many times, Rabbi Elimelech and Reb Zusha. Rabbi Elimelech of Lizhensk, later he became the Rebbe, and Zusha of Anipoli. They were both students of the Maggid of Mizrich, colleagues of the Alter Rebbe, and Vayikra Kabraditchev, and they used to travel a lot together, always slept in all kinds of places. And somehow the traveling, they called it Golus. Golus, you know, you're looking for atonement. That's how they took atonement for themselves, by not being settled in their own comfortable homes, in their own comfortable places. And that's how they lived. Let's close it. So they say the story, these two brothers actually had a third brother. They had a third brother. We don't speak about him so much. He wasn't from the Rebbe's. The third brother of Rabbi Melech and Rabbi Zusha was also a tzaddik, but he lived on an intersection, and he kept an inn, you know, like a kretschmer. People used to drive by and spend over the night there and so on. And while to the traveling, so Rabbi Melech and Rabbi Zusha also choose to pay a visit by their brother. They stayed in all kinds of places, so the brother was one of the places that they end up staying. In the middle of the night, they heard crying. Outburst of a very deep cry. It was their brother, and they saw him sitting in the room, on the floor. He holds a little notebook, and he cries bitterly. You know, brothers after all are brothers, so they try to find out, what's going on? Why are you crying? What's bothering you? So he told them, listen, anytime, every day, if I did something wrong, whether in my thoughts or in my speech, obviously in my action, something I wasn't welcoming someone properly, I wasn't charging him 100% properly or honestly, I write it down in this booklet. And at night I take this booklet and I turn to God and I cry with remorse and regret, asking Hashem to forgive me for my wrongdoings. And I don't go to sleep until I feel 100% that God had forgiven me for my wrongdoings. Fine. A notebook, just like Rabbi Shmuel. So Rabbi Melech and Rabbi Zusha asked their brothers, at which point do you know that God actually forgave you for your sins? Like what's the point in you crying over the booklet that you can be confirmed that this is it? I can go sleep now, Hashem has forgiven me. So he showed on the booklet, on the notebook, and he said, you see, this is what I write. and I cry, and I cry, and once my tears erased everything I wrote, then I know that Hashem forgave. That's the sign. It's very nice. They feel I'm crying so much that my tears already erased my my recordings. Then I know it's okay. I can move on. Tomorrow will be another clean day. That's all right. That was the story. That was the story of what's it called? No, this is all good stories. Zusha's brother, Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Akiva's friend, Rabbi Shmuel, who wrote the booklet, Mashiach is going to come, I'm going to bring a sin offering. Anybody keep records? Not that you anytime sin. I'm not asking Schneider, he doesn't sin, but people like, common, normal people. Normal, healthy people. Anyone keeps records?
I read in the commentary, probably 6 weeks ago.
There
on
was?
Shabbat. I read in the I usually read the commentaries on Shabbat,
Yeah.
that there might not be, we might not be doing, korbanot
When?
when Mashiach comes.
What did you
When the
read?
temple's rebuilt, in the commentary.
Which one? The Old Testament?
In this one right here.
Every day me asking for the restoration of in our
No,
prayers.
when the temple is rebuilt, I'm talking about.
So I say every day me asking for the rebuilding of the temple and the returning of the korbanot.
Maybe it was animals. Maybe it said there might not be animal korbanot.
I know that I have a good friend in Bellevue, her name is Liz Bernberg. And I know that she would have liked to have a commentary saying that there's not going to be
I will
korbanot in the
find
future. But
Maybe I read what I wanted to read. We'll see.
I didn't say that.
Well,
You have to ask my
maybe.
friend Liz Bernberg. So what's going on? How do we deal with that? What are we doing with Parshas Vayikra? Are we wasting our time?
Yeah,
Why not?
because once Mashiach comes,
I'm talking today.
is
Because there's
Mashiach
other
coming
ways to
tonight?
But so what happened yesterday? What happened to your father? What happened to your grandfather? What happened to all the years that we are learning Parshas Vayikra? Mashiach did not come. So what's going on?
We pray.
Ah?
We pray.
Oh,
We
we pray.
repent.
What are we praying?
We give tzedakah.
So here is what we have, a very beautiful verse that we read every year on every time there's a public fast. We actually read that verse in the Haftorah of the public fast where it says, Chu imochem dvorim, take with yourself words, beshuvu el Hashem, and return to God. Prophet Isaiah talks about the words that we are taking with us, and with these words we are returning to Hashem. What are those words that we are taking with us? What are the words? Basically, God had it all in plan. He had it all in plan. There's going to be a time, like there is now a time when we have no Beis HaMikdash, there's no temple in Jerusalem, there's no altar to offer sacrifices, there's no Kohen. We don't have all this that we are reading this week and studying. Yes. And God willing, Mashiach is going to come very soon. We're going to rededicate ourselves to the korbanot, exactly like it says in the Torah, the animals with the wood offering, with the salt. By the way, there's not only animals. There was other things. There was offerings. If you read this parsha, you read that every element was used for a korban. You could have bring a living creature like an animal. You could have been also growing things. There is wood that you can offer, korban eitzim. There is minerals. There is salt. Salt is a part of a korban. Actually, matter of fact, every korban in this week's parsha tells us every korban had to have salt. You could have bring a bird. You could have bring a liquid. For the libation, you brought some oil. And by the way, the korbanot was not that much. If you think about one of the most important korbanot was the daily offering called korban tamid. Think about it a second. Korban tamid, the daily offering. What was the daily offering? One sheep. One sheep for whom?
Everyone.
For the entire assembly of Israel. One sheep in the morning, one sheep in the afternoon. That sheep basically atoned for all the sins before that sheep was offered, and the second sheep atoned for all the sins which were between one to the other. Everyone was a partner in the sheep by how? By giving a half a shekel once a year. And it came with a little bit of, wine, when it was poured, right? It was really, if you think about it in amounts, in quantity, we really offered, as a person, you gave something so minimal of the minimal. But we were partners in it. Every day we were partners in the morning. You didn't have to be there. You didn't have to be there. We had representatives who offered the korbanot for us on a daily basis. That's how the services started in the morning. That's how the services ended in the afternoon. And that korban tamid atoned for all of us for certain sins. The Gemara goes into detail what types of sins it took care of. So if you think about it, you really, really, really didn't have to spend so much in order to bring a korban. You gave a half a shekel, and you were a member in every daily korban which was offered twice a day. Unbelievable. So the Torah says, the prophet says, that in the time when there is no korban and there is no temple, God offers us yet another way in order to achieve what the korban does. And this way is called using your mouth, speech. Speech. You talk about the korban. The very fact that we actually study Chumash Vayikra, you study about the sin offering, God says, I consider it for you offering for me a sin offering. You study about a peace offering, God says, I count it as if you offered a peace offering, a Thanksgiving offering. Everything but just reading. I think we don't always realize that Judaism puts a tremendous emphasis and value to the power of speech by saying things. Simply saying things. We all know that speech is powerful. When you're angry and you speak, what happens? You get even more angry. Right? You hate someone and you talk about it, you express it, you hate them even more. You love someone and you express it, you love them even more. Speech does an impact of our feelings. It develops it, it increases it. But Torah put a tremendous emphasis on saying words of confession, vidui, oshamnu. These words are increasing and enhancing our sensitivity and realization of what we did. In addition to that comes the prophet who says, I just want you to read about it, okay? Just read about it, and that's going to help you, and that's going to assist you, and consider it for you as if that korban was actually offered. So we're not wasting our time in any way learning about the korbanot. Not only we are not wasting our time, matter of fact, we are accomplishing tremendously by reading it, and parts of it we read every day. In the introduction to davening, we actually read paragraphs which describe how the korbanos were offered. So this answers this question, okay? Tonight is a very special night. what's so special tonight? First of all, Arnold is back from Mexico. And David Schneider is back from Vancouver, Washington. Anybody else back from somewhere? Rabbi Farkash was visiting Chicago. Everybody else got from Shmuley. Anybody came back from somewhere? Who were you guys? Canada. Ooh, wow.
I'm back
You back?
yesterday.
From?
Mexico.
Also Mexico.
Not together, not together.
I never suspected the Luba not to be.
I have to be careful, David.
No one had any thoughts that Luba is not so smart. We all know her as a smart lady, so there was no suspicion. But anyway, tonight is the 7th of Adar. The 7th of Adar is a very, very special day. This is the day which celebrates the birth and the passing of Moshe. Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe had a difficulty. He had a disability. He was born, he was a perfect person. A perfect person. To the point he was even born circumcised. It says in the verse that when he was born, the house was filled. They saw how good he is. Talmud says, what was so good? It was shining, it was perfect. They didn't even have to give him a bris. Usually the bris represented he needs some fixing. We're getting involved in repairing God's creation. He didn't even need that repair. Everything was perfect. But a few years later, he hurt himself and brought on himself a disability. There's a whole story in the Medrash, something which has to do in Pharaoh's palace, playing with fire, with coins. The story is not as important as the end of the story, which, as we all know, the Torah teaches us, to us. Moshe himself tells God, when he was charged with the mission to take us out of Egypt, he tells God, I have a disability which does not allow me to serve as a leader. And that disability had to do with speech. Dibur. We are talking over here that God gave us the power of speech. And even if we don't have korbanot, we can still continue speaking about it. And when we speak about them, then God considers it for us as if we actually offered them. And tonight, we are celebrating the life of Moshe. And Moshe was actually someone who did not speak. Did not speak. Yet, there is another person who doesn't speak, and we are celebrating your life this coming week. And this is Esther. Next week, tonight, we're not going to have class. We're all going to be here, God willing. About this time, we are going to read the Megillah. We're going to just end the fast at 10 to 8. And we are going to synagogue to read the Megillah. And the story of the Megillah describes a few times when Achashverosh is asking Esther, who are you? Who are you people? What's your family name? What does the Megillah say? Ein Esther, Magedes Boladito Vesamo, Ki Kein Tzivo Leo Mordechai. Esther does not tell nothing to Achashverosh. He doesn't tell her where she comes from. He doesn't tell her who her family is. All the girls are bragging, who they're Zaydes and Baba, because they're all trying to get to become a wife to Achashverosh. But Esther doesn't say nothing. Why doesn't she say nothing? Because Mordechai told her, don't say nothing. Mordechai was the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said, don't speak, so she doesn't speak. Comes later, and when the story develops, and she's already queen, and she has her first appointment, the unauthorized appointment with Achashverosh, after she hears about the decree against her people, So now the story comes that she comes into Achashverosh. And what does Achashverosh tell her? Esther, what do you want? Right? Ma retzaynech Esther HaMalka Uma bakoshaseich ad chatzi HaMalchus. What is your request? What's your desire? Tell me what you want till half of the kingdom is yours. And what does the Megillah say? That she says nothing. I don't want nothing. Let's just have another party. So what does the Megillah say? That now Ahasuerus finds Esther very charming. But timtzo chen v'chesed lefonov ki loy biksha davar. She finds charm in his eyes. She finds them to be very favorable. Why? Because she says nothing. She's a garnish. That not saying nothing, that not asking for anything, is what brings Achashverosh to like it even more. So what is it? Should we be quiet? Should we not be quiet? Should we speak? Should we not speak? What is the right attitude? In the one hand we said, like the prophet Isaiah mentions, "Chu imachem dvarim v'shuvu el Hashem." Take words. You don't have a korban. Speak, ask, discuss, and that's how you're going to return to God. But then we have Moshe Rabbeinu who doesn't even speak, and he becomes the closest person to God. And Achashverosh finds Esther so favorable in his eyes because she asks for nothing. I saw such a good insight the other day. Here I have a book. I don't know the name. I took it out. Here, Yesoi Tzad. That book. This is by a Hasidic Rabbi. His name was Reb Shloime of Zvil. You know who Zvil is? I can tell you who Zvil is. Zvil is the next, not far from Berditchev in Ukraine. And in Zvil lived a Rebbe. His name was Reb Shloime Zviller. He actually later came to Israel. He was arrested and came to Israel in the 1930s, early 30s. Matter of fact, talking about this Rebbe, Reb Shloime Zviller, he lived in the old city in Jerusalem, and he used to go to the Kotel every day. First, when he came to Jerusalem, he didn't tell anybody that he is the Rebbe from Zvil. People didn't know who he is. And he used to take the bus and, go to a yeshiva there, Chaye Olam, sit and learn. Nobody knew. He took care of poor people, but nobody knew who he is. And one time, a Ukrainian Jew was walking by Jerusalem, and he sees them sitting there waiting for the bus, and he looked at me and gave a scream, Zvila Rebbe! Like, what are you doing? And then it was discovered to everyone that the Zvila Rebbe is here. Nobody even knew, he didn't tell anybody. Matter of fact, my grandmother has an amazing story with the Zvila Rebbe. Want to hear a good story with the Zvila Rebbe? I'll tell you a story. That was my, So the story is that my grandmother, my Baba Liba, she got married in the 30s, 1930 something. And she had a sister-in-law who got married at the same time. My Zayda sister, Miriam was her name, Miriam Weber. So this is now two sister-in-laws who are married, and a year goes by, and 2 years goes by, and 3 years goes by, and 4 years goes by, and 5 years go by, and they both don't have kids. Not because they didn't want to have kids. They wanted to have kids, but they didn't have kids. Not having kids, they davened, they went to tzaddikim, they drove to the grave sites, they went to doctors, couldn't figure out what the problem is. And they knew that the Zvila Rebbe goes every day to the wall, to the Kotel. That time my grandmother lived by not far from the Kotel, on the way to the Shem gate, in the old city. I saw that house. My grandfather showed us the house a few times. They were residents of the old city of Jerusalem till 1948. So my Baba and the sister-in-law decided that that's it. They're going to ambush the Zvila Rebbe. He's going to have to give them a blessing. They're not going to let him go. But how can you get near him? in the men's section by the Kotel. But they knew he's going early in the morning. And one night, as she told us, it was a big, heavy snow. And they both decided nobody's going to be tomorrow morning by the Kotel, but the Rebbe of Zvil, Reb Shlomo, is for sure going to be there. So that's the time to go over him. They waited him. And lo and behold, nobody was by the Kotel. Snow, terrible, packed snow in the old city of Jerusalem. And who is walking early morning down the wall? Shloimke, the Rebbe, the Zvila Rebbe is going. They waited for him, and then the two ladies, like I said, ambushed them. And they said, Rebbe, we want a bracha for kids. Nope. What should he do? He turned to my grandmother. He asked her if she has a pruta. A pruta is like a coin for tzedakah. And my Bobby gave him a coin for tzedakah. And then he davened, he turned around, and he said, in Yiddish, es haben and haben, you're going to have and have and have and have and have. She didn't count how many times. She just remembered it was many times. Es haben and haben and haben and haben, you're going to have a child. Later, when she had 10 children, one after another, so she thinks probably he said 10 times. You know, you're going to have and have and have. Then when my great aunt, Miriam, tried to get the same, he ignored her. So that's it. I can't find you this blessing. And she never had kids. So she never had, but my Baba had 10 children. A bracha of this Rebbe. So I have this book over here. And, lately I brought all my Hasidic books on the Parsha, non-Chabad books, to the library here. I took it from my house. So I have it organized, I can look, and then sometime during the day when I'm here myself or during davening and I don't want to daven, so I go and open up a book and I see what it says. So I took a look on Purim. You know what it says? Something so beautiful. The Rebbe of Zvil says that you know why Esther found favor in Achashverosh's eyes? The verse says she didn't ask anything and she found favor in his eyes. So he says the reason she found favor in his eyes because she did not ask for anything. So he says that's the power of tefillah. If you want to know how to find favor in God's eyes, don't ask him for anything. Daven, but don't ask. So he says, what happens on Purim? Listen to that. Give you a good Purim insight. He said, what happens on Purim? Purim, we are told by our sages that we should drink, right? You drink wine, adela yada. You get out of your limitations. He says, why is that they made this institution to drink and overdrink? Doesn't make any sense of such an enactment of drinking, get intoxicated. You know what the Zvila Rebbe says? Purim is a very holy day. And you can take from God a lot. Purim you can get from God a lot of good things. But if you're going to start asking, so you don't know what to ask for, you're going to end up asking for the wrong things. So the sages said, okay, listen, you better get drunk. According to Jewish law, someone who drinks is not allowed to pray. You know that? So then you're not going to ask for nothing, and that's how you're going to get the best out of God. By being drunk and not asking and being quiet, that's going to get you what you need to get. Then you're going to be like Esther. Esther Amalka did not ask for anything, and that's how she found favor in Achashverosh. So we know it says in Kabbalah that Esther means Knesset Yisrael. We are all called Esther. And Achashverosh is a reference to God, right? Achashverosh is the King of Kings. And just like Esther found favor in God, Achashverosh's eyes, by not asking.